So I've just started that recording, and we'll get the demos up on our YouTube channel as soon as we have that available to us. So let me start at the beginning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Josh Hadro. I'm the managing director of the IIIF Consortium, which is a community-supported body that in turn then supports different community calls like this, as well as various community groups and technical groups that do the important work of advancing the IIIF specifications and the work and best practices that's going on around the globe. And I see folks from all over the place joining us today, so that's great. We have, so if you're new to these calls, we do these about every 2 weeks with occasional breaks here and there. And we typically feature either topical elements or demos of kind of interesting and new work in the community. That's what we really have on tap for today is 2 demos of kind of newly developed or newly improved digital collection sites. And so we'll get to that in just a moment. But what we also often do, I think in a good way, these calls are starting to get big enough that doing introductions is probably a little bit unwieldy. But we are really grateful to have you all, and you know, by all means, what I've seen work in the past is people introducing themselves in the chat window. I don't think we'll go around just because I think that might take quite a bit of time here. But we're really grateful to have you, especially if you're relatively new to these calls, and we hope these are useful to you, and we hope you'll then kind of branch into some of the other more topical or specific community groups or technical groups. And if you have questions, there's 2 of us who work for the IIIFC staff here, myself and Meg O'Hearn. We're happy to answer questions, as are really tons of other people in the IIIF community. So I guess skipping introductions, I will ask if there's anyone who'd be willing to take some notes in that open notes document. It's a pretty lightweight job, especially since this is a demo heavy call. I'll paste the link again. But is there anybody who'd be willing to capture some basic notes?
I can do it.
Great, thank you, Meg. All right. That brings us then to our announcements section. From the IIIF HQ side, kind of basic standing announcements, we have an outreach calendar that's linked from the notes and agenda document. I'm actually realizing now that in light of the global travel pause, essentially, we probably need to update these. But the larger point is we like to try and keep track of different events that have IIIF related talks or papers or anything like that, outreach efforts. So if you know of them, please, by all means, edit that document. It's open to all, and it then gets reflected on our website. So we need to update that to reflect the fact that we have postponed our annual conference, the IIIF annual gathering, that was meant to happen in June of this year. For obvious reasons, we've postponed that. But in lieu of that, we are planning some virtual programming for that same week. And I've lost my agenda here. Here we go. And so we have kind of roughed out a schedule. Instead of doing long blocks of time, we're going to do kind of targeted, likely 1-hour sessions over the course of the week, featuring different topics and targeted to different areas of the world. But to gather some community feedback about what you'd like to see and what might be useful, I'm going to paste this into the notes, but we've created a lightweight survey. So if you haven't already, it's really helpful to us if you fill out that quick survey and let us know what you might be interested in. And we'll get started planning that program in the next few weeks. It's coming together pretty quickly, or it will come together pretty quickly. So look for that through the regular IIIF mechanisms. Yeah, in the next coming weeks, I think we'll have more of that firmed up. And put it on your calendar for the week of June 1 to 4, 1 to 5. I'm thinking, I don't know, we have to figure out the marketing of it. Kind of week of IIIF sounds sort of intense, but I kind of like that idea. So maybe that's what we'll go with. That is all we have from the IIIF side. But are there any other announcements? Anyone out there have anything that they'd like to mention or bring to the attention of the community group gathered here? Going once. Okay. Well, feel free also, if you want to drop links into the document, that's fine too, into that announcement section.
Josh?
Yes.
Sorry, hi, this is Joe Padfield from the National Gallery London.
Yes, please.
I had one little minor thing. It's purely sort of to some extent looking for guinea pigs. I've been doing some experiments with how GitHub can do some automatic processing. So what I'm looking at doing is building effectively a small project on GitHub that would allow non-tech researchers to effectively gather together lists of manifests for IIIF and display them in a Mirador viewer automatically. So all they need to do is edit a simple list and they have their own little virtual research environment. So I'm kind of looking for use cases or people who might want to test it. It's kind of quite early on at the moment. But the idea is to try and allow people who don't have their own server and all this kind of stuff ability to play. I can drop the link of the thing the whole sort of little project, which I am working on. I haven't done the specific IIIF example of it yet, but the project I will drop into the chat.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. That sounds really useful and interesting. So yeah, if folks are willing to be a guinea pig, please grab that link and take a look. And Joe, I don't know if you've already done it. Maybe worth putting it out on the IIIF Slack channel or the discuss list once you have something too.
I can do. It's very early at the moment.
Sure, whenever you think it's right, but that's great.
Okay.
And one other thing I'll mention, just maybe for folks on the call, but also to you as well, is that it sounds like there's some overlap to some of the kind of user-facing research coming out of the newest IIIF community group called Discovery for Humans. So I'm just pasting the link to that in the chat. But I know that they are kind of at the phase of looking at how researchers are, working with or desire to work with assets and IIIF manifests across institutions. So it might be worth just bringing that to their attention. Great. Well, thank you. Any other announcements or things to bring to folks' attention? In that case, I think we'll move into the main body of content that we have for our community call today, which is 2 demos of new and improved kind of research interfaces or collections interfaces. And so we have Daniel Michaels from the National Institute for Newman Studies, and we have Andrew Wilson from the University of St. Andrews. As a logistical note, I believe I've made you both co-hosts, so you should have the ability to screen share. If you don't, let me know. But this is a precaution we're taking because of, I guess, the Zoom bombing issue that a lot of people are encountering. But I guess I have listed here first Daniel, but sort of, do you want to go first, Daniel? I don't know if you have strong feelings one way or the other.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Great. Go ahead and take it away if you have the ability to screen share.
I do.
Great, thank you.
Can everyone see my screen? I assume if one of you can, then all of you can. Well, thank you for having me, Josh. I've been sort of meaning to check in with this group for quite some time, and I was glad to get the nudge via Ben and at St. Louis University, and now Josh. So what you're seeing is a fairly newly launched version of our digital collections. And I should also mention that Krunal Shaw, who's our project lead and one of our developers, is also on this call. So if there's any time for questions, he might be able to help with some things as well. So the collections is basically consists of two things: a front end and a back end interface for us to manage all the documents that are on the front end. And because we're a small organization and we don't have large CMSs and document managers and things like that to deal with, we were sort of able to build everything into one. So we have our asset management, our a lightbox, abilities to upload manifests, all that stuff sort of built into one. And we assembled them. We assembled it together using some existing tools and other things that we developed on our own. You can see here there are several collections. We have many different collections that are in the queue. We only have 3 of them currently online, plus a sort of unique database where you can search for things that Newman wrote or actually that he checked out of the library. So if I check some of these boxes, that'll give you a little more detail. These were things that he checked out of a library while he was a fellow at Oxford. And so you can follow what he was reading along with what he was writing in our other collections. So in theory, you could open a document and look at the date of this document and match that with the senior library records and hopefully come up with perhaps a smoking gun to what it was he was writing. Now, Newman was probably one of the more famous converts from Anglicanism to Catholicism. So that database is pretty critical because you kind of can see his transition between the two. But we can have as many collections as we want. They're automatically fed into the features collections if we want them to. The main search portal searches for any metadata keywords. And then once you're inside of those results, and there's a couple different ways to view the results, depending on what you prefer, you can filter them based on various fields that are in our metadata and also in the manifests. This was sort of inspired by the New York Library digital collections. So I can select who wrote this document, and then I could select he was writing to Newman. So there's 67 letters from that particular one. If I wanted to, I could also narrow it down by date, collection, or even choose a specific call number if I have a reference in a source that I'm using. And then, of course, you could add more to this up at the top in the main feature, which this filter makes it really easy for us to scan the metadata and for scholars to find what they need. And then in addition to that, you probably noticed that we're using Mirador we're using Mirador 3 as our document viewer. And we've added some tools to this to make it very usable for the type of things that we need to do. The main one is that our users often have to compare works from Newman with others or Newman between Newman. We have about 250,000 folios. And so we built our search filters directly into Mirador. So you can open another document right from inside of Mirador. If I wanted to, I could close, let's get rid of the thumbnails. Turn off the thumbnails. So now I can compare these two documents quite easily. The other thing that's nice is we have published works of Newman's that are transcripts of a lot of these same documents. So in theory, you could find the document that matches whatever it is you're trying to compare, and then have the typed page along with the original manuscripts, however you want to do that. This was one of the main reasons we chose Mirador, because we could have the flexibility of comparing all these documents side by side. And that has worked out quite well. The other thing that we built into this, let me go back into published works. Let's go Aryans of the 4th century. We built in a search bar. I'm going to go to, actually, you know what, I had one of these open already. Let's do this one. So I can do an advanced search. We added the ability to search the documents by all words, any word, exact phrase, or wildcard. So if I wanted to search for that exact phrase, it's going to pop it up and show me those results inside of Mirador. And what's nice is the transcriptions also appear from OCR. But we can also format those transcriptions in the back end. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around. I've tried to preload some of these so you would see them. We can actually format the transcriptions using HTML or any typical, I'm having a brain melt right now, but any of the text editor type things that you would use to format your text. This allows users to select and cut and paste information from a specific document into their research, which is quite nice. And then you can turn this. So this was an additional plugin that we added on top of the other one. Between the filter and the transcription plugin, we find that hits most of our use cases for the types of things that our scholars are trying to do. We also have automated related documents. If you choose them, they would appear here. This will become prevalent once we have the time to update all of the manuscripts. Like if there was a handwritten version of this, we would have that related down here so that you could find it. You can also quickly search the writings of the author that you click on, and it just basically grabs that filter for that author and gives you the search. Now for Newman, since he's our main character, that resulted in 10,000 hits. There's actually more than 10,000. He's most of our writings. So that's basically the front end in a very quick overview. And now I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot of the back end, and hopefully it's enough to wet your whistle that if you want to contact me later, you can get some more information. So the architecture, this looks sort of complex. It's not as bad as it looks. And actually, it's missing some things. When we started this, it all started with the image server. I assume you can see my mouse here. We started by testing different image servers. We ended up settling on Cantaloupe, and we purchased a license for the Kakadu processor, which we really like the way that's worked for us, particularly with our formula for converting our TIFFs into tiled JP2s. And this is all set up on an auto-scaling group. So as our needs with Cantaloupe grow, once we hit a certain threshold, be it image processor or whatever, it will deploy another server. In fact, if something goes wrong, the image server jams, something happens, the same applies there as well. It'll auto deploy a new instance of Cantaloupe. And we do all that with CloudFormation and an AMI built with Packer. So it just kind of rolls it out automatically. And then in our backend interface, which is signified here in the drawing, we can import TIFFs or JP2s, and then those get uploaded to Glacier for our long-term storage so they don't get touched, and then processed into S3, and then they're in sync with Elastic File Sync, or the Elastic File Server, so that Cantaloupe can read those as if the S3 images are on their drive, because it's hard to go from S3 directly to Cantaloupe. But if you use EFS, it sort of functions as if it's its own file server that's part of Cantaloupe. And we found it to work really well. Everything else sort of grew out of this. We started with IIIF and then started building our application from there. Now, if we look at the back end, you can see we have the 3 collections that we currently have, and we built in an asset manager. So this is basically mirroring what we have on S3. And if you upload anything to this, then that gets uploaded to S3. So, and it gets synced with EFS and thus our Cantaloupe image server. So you can see the images here that were uploaded for this particular call number. Looks like a book, and you can preview if you need to see what it is you're looking at. And then once you've uploaded those images, you can come over to a lightbox. If you can imagine, in our case, a curator might have each box of our archives contains 500 to 1,000 folios. And so what the curator can do is come here and create an item. We'll just create one. And I'm going to grab one from box 1, album 1, and I'm only going to take, we'll take 8 of these images. And I click next, save, and we'll call this IIIF test, make the item. And so now we have this folder. But you can imagine, in our case, most of the time, we're creating something. This particular album had 94 items in it. It could be any number of items. And then if we go back to documents, and I create a new document, or if I'm editing a document, actually it might be better if I edit a document. That'll give you a little more feel for a use case. So I can come here, import pages, open sequence. This is the Bodleian editor that we've heavily modified. And you see the IIIF test right there. And so I can select that and then drag these items onto my canvas if I need them. So that makes it easy. So the curators can actually go from asset management right to adding documents or pages to their documents in the document manager, which is quite nice. They can also, if they already know the image names and the URLs, they could also import the canvases with a CSV file. So here's a little test import that I made. If I open that, it will import all of those pages right to the document, and then they can return to edit the manifest and do various things. Now inside of this editor, again, you'll recognize sort of the bones of the Bodleian editor, which we've edited. You'll see that we've added a few extra goodies, like you can set this as the first page, but maybe you want this one to be the thumbnail. Maybe you don't want to OCR this page, so you can skip OCR. And then up here is where you would actually OCR the document. I'm not going to do that right now. And then you can view the canvas metadata. Now, what's also interesting is that you can edit. You recall that I showed you the transcriptions on the front end. Those transcriptions exist at the canvas level. So in this case, I can see the transcriptions here. I could edit the HTML if I wanted to, or I could just type the edit things in here however I wanted to. This is particularly helpful if you're doing a page that maybe has OCR, like this one, but it isn't formatted yet. So if I wanted to, maybe I don't want this to be part of that document, I could get rid of that, or I could import the transcriptions. There's actually a tab right here. We already have a lot of this data transferred into HTML. So we can import all those right through this interface, which makes it quite easy. I'm already coming up on my time, so I don't want to go over. I think maybe that's probably a good stopping point. It's basically, We've got the full document management, all the things that you would expect in the Bodleian editor with a lot of new columns. We added a lot of extra things like in the authors, you can start it'll quick fill in the names, that sort of thing. You can also use, add things in here like at Newman. If I wanted to insert a name into a label, sort of like Twitter labels, this is where the related documents section is. Then we have a curator document notes so that you can curate the documents. We can do quick searches to find things. Like if we marked things that need to be fixed, like the physical thing needs to be fixed, we can mark that here. And then of course the Canvas metadata, anything we need associated with that. So I realized that I was sort of going at the speed of light, but I'm already at 15 minutes. So, and I want to give Andrew time to do his thing. So I hope that was helpful.
I think that was incredibly helpful. I mean, it's such a nice thing. I mean, it's one thing to see the front end, and anybody can play around with that and kind of see all the things that that you're talking about. But it's such a nice thing to be able to walk through the back end and see how you've edited some of these open tools to make that doable. So I know there's a couple of questions. I think we have time for a few questions now, and then we can turn to Andrew. But I think. Yeah, Jason Ronaldo had a question in the chat, just asking, what does it take to build that kind of functionality into Mirador? Some of those customizations, how challenging is it?
Chrono could probably answer that better than I, but it didn't take a horrible amount of time. The hardest, we originally built it just in raw JavaScript on the front end, and then and we were originally using that JavaScript. It was kind of long. It was like 10 or 11,000 lines of code. And then we built that into a more standard Mirador plugin. But it was weeks, not months. It wasn't like it took forever to do. It was very doable. And that is something that I think we would like to offer back to the Mirador community, as well as our advanced search plugin. We've been so busy getting this up that we haven't had time to sort of standardize everything. But they're built using the Mirador infrastructure and their plugin structure. The only things that are different, like that plus mark, when we click to do the filter search, we had to do some modifications there because that just wasn't part of the Mirador spec. But we're certainly happy to share as much of this stuff as we can.
I feel fairly confident speaking on behalf of Mirador community folks, but I think that there are a lot of people who'd be very excited to see that, and I'm sure people willing to help out and advise on that. And I think that's maybe one more question. I see Ben put a question in the chat here saying that yeah, this is pretty amazing stuff, but maybe asking you to speak briefly about how you ended up deciding to build this internally or do those modifications versus using something off the shelf.
Sure. Part of our problem, and it's not really a problem, it's a good thing. We have a lot of diverse types of documents and metadata. For example, that senior library record project that I showed you, that's totally non-IIIF separate application that we wanted to integrate as tightly with our IIIF assets as we could. We also have poetry. We also have we're in the process of publishing The Dream of Gerontius by Elgar, which is a musical score, original musical score. It's huge. We just had it scanned, and we did multispectral scanning. We did backlight scanning. So we're building custom layers onto the Bodleian editor so that we can have layers and canvases and tables of contents and all that sort of stuff. So the short answer is, we have so many different types of documents and so many different types of needs, and metadata that was published documents that's all MARC data, and archival documents that's all Dublin core, that there were too many moving parts. So we decided to make our own so that we could integrate them all, but we separated them in a way that we actually are developing an API so that Duquesne University can get our mark records or doubling for, or however they want it, and we can have the feeds for them. But we found all the things we looked at, whether on Amica or whatever, we ended up having 5 tools to do everything. And our staff is so small that we couldn't train them fast enough. And then the technology would change and the document type would change and we'd be starting over. So we just figured we'd bite the bullet and develop this on our own. And what we'd like to do is offer this as something to the community. We're not sure how that would look because we can't just afford to develop it for everyone on our own. So we're thinking maybe an open source model plus some partners. It's still too early. We're still developing it, but we want to share it. We're just not sure how. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, sounds like it did. Yeah, so that all sounds great. It sounds like there's already a lot of folks interested. So maybe there is a group you could put together to take a look at some of those things. I would say we'll have time at the end if there are more questions, but maybe write them down. And at the moment, maybe let's turn it over to Andrew for our second demo here. And then, yeah, we'll do questions for everybody again at the end. Andrew, are you set to take over?
I think so. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all set.
Excellent. Okay, let's see if I can share the screen. Hello, everyone from sunny, well, not so sunny Scotland now. So I'm just going to share this screen here, and hopefully that's worked okay. I've got a couple of slides just to kick things off to say exactly where we are with this. My name is Andrew Wilson. I'm an application services manager at the University of St Andrews. Just for some background, if no one knows anything about St Andrews, we're quite small. We're founded in 1410. We're one of the oldest universities in Scotland. We are the oldest university in Scotland, and third in the UK behind Oxford and Cambridge. We're relatively small with about 9,000 FTE. But we kind of tend to punch above our weight when it comes to things like student satisfaction. And these are icons that we got told we have to put into presentations at the moment for national student surveys and university guides and that kind of thing. So with 600 years of collecting, we have kind of ended up with 600 years of silos as well. So we've ended up with a multitude of systems for collection management systems at the university. So now we've got a system called AdLib for our museum collection. We have a system called KEView for our photographic collection. And also we have a system called CALM for our manuscript collection. Plus on top of that, we have another system, an open source system called Iondora, which kind of sits off somewhere off to the side somewhere that has some sort of digital surrogates in it as well. So one of the things we were looking at was the user experience with all this. It was absolutely atrocious. A user had to know which system web interface to go to find a particular thing. No one should have to know that a manuscript belongs in something called an archive collection. They shouldn't have to know, especially when the archive collection could sometimes have photographs in it, or the museum could have books in it, and it was a complete mess. So we kind of started from scratch with looking at the user experience with it. And we had 2 options really. We could either just have a consolidated front end, which I know a lot of places do, and keep the back systems separate. But we kind of felt that it was going to be quite difficult to sort out all the data with all of that. So one of the big problems is obviously provenance with the data. So if you've got 3 versions of, I don't know, Winston Churchill in each system as a creator, then how do you marry all those up in the front end? And I know that a lot of places have that problem when they do come to this single front end problem. So we kind of decided to skirt by that, and also because we were hoping to save some money, because crazily CALM, AdLib, and KEView are all owned by the same company, so we're paying 3 lots of license fees as well. So we were kind of thinking, well, we should probably maybe try and see if we can start to consolidate this in. So we kind of have it's quite a slow process, but the first step was to decide on the system, and we decided for now that KEView seems the one that we should use. It's the most enterprise level. It's got the best digital asset management module in it. It's not to say it's amazing compared with an actual digital asset management system, but it's sufficient. So our first step was actually to create this new photo site, which I'll be demoing in a minute, I promise. So the first step is to get all the data corrected in the system, and then we export that nightly into a system that we have called Fuddleback. So Fuddleback is a bit like Elasticsearch. It's an enterprise level indexer system. So we export all the XML nightly, Fuddleback ingests it, and the great thing about Fuddleback, it actually has a presentation layer on top, which mainly is based around using FreeMarker, FTL language, to create interfaces. So we can leverage the power of an actual proper enterprise level search system, finally, really compared with the front end systems that we've got for searching at the moment. And then on top of that, we obviously have the IIIF. So at the moment, if we're at the stage where we're at the right-hand side of the screen, where we have the photographic collection done. The next step is to try and go for the next bit of low-hanging fruit, which is the museum collection. So the AdLib should hopefully migrate relatively simply into the EMU system, and then we should have a photographic and museum front end. And then finally, second to finally, we should be able to migrate the archive collection in, which is the manuscript, which is probably the most difficult part of it. And then we should have at that point something that we can then call something like our collection system, the university's digital collections, or something where we truly have pretty much everything in there. And then at some point we'll pick up these digital surrogates that we've got elsewhere. Just on the bottom left, there's a random picture of people covered in foam and a dotted line. One of the other things that we're working on at the moment as well is for our corporate communications team is to ensure that all the photographs that they take for official events and that kind of thing all goes into the photographic system as well, so they're all properly preserved going forward, so we don't sort of lose any blips in our timeline. So how have I used IIIF? Well, I'm afraid it's actually really, really hacky, especially compared to that previous presentation that looked absolutely amazing. So this is well dodgy, but it kind of works for the time being. It's not where I want to be in the long term. So a user accesses the Fuddleback website. They find their record, whichever one it is. They open up a universal viewer, which opens up the manifest. Again, that then requests the image via Cantaloupe, which it's on the same server at the moment as the collection system. But then this is where it gets pretty rubbish. It basically then goes and requests a JPEG over HTTP from the KEMU system, which then uses its built-in DAM's ability to convert the full-size TIFF to JPEG to then deliver it back to Cantaloupe via HTTP, which then delivers it back to the universal viewer. At that point, it does create a cache version, so it's a bit quicker in future, but it's not great delivering things over HTTP to go grab them to get them via HTTP to then deliver again via HTTP. So where I'd actually like to get to is where this bit it gets requested from Cantaloupe. Cantaloupe has a direct access to the actual images where we could have a JP2 version of it, which then gets delivered via native file store. I've got problems with that in that we don't have any JP2s for about the 350,000 images that we have in the system. We have TIFFs and we have various sizes of JPEGs that the DAMS creates when the TIFFs are imported. So we have to think of a process of how we can either create these JP2s or create them on the fly and then cache them for future, for like forever. So they're only created on request, so it's slow for the first person. And then in future, it might not be so slow, or programmatically go through. So that's something we need to look at soonish, I think. So it's not sort of very whiz bang at the moment. It's a wee bit hacky, but it kind of works as our first attempt. So I will shoot through into here now. Okay, so we did some usability testing, and we found that users, surprisingly actually, because we thought a lot of users of these heritage systems were sort of archivists at heart. They always want to do very precise searches. It turns out as long as the results, as long as the search results are very good, they don't mind searching by keyword and then filtering. So I'm just going to search for something. I haven't really prepared that much, I'm afraid. So this might be a bit random. So you search for our photographic collection. I think we've got about, I think it's somewhere between 150,000 and 300,000 images at the moment, actually online. And I think the actual collection has something like 300, no, I think it must be 400,000 like records, but with some of them don't have images attached. When you do your search, you get your results. Various views for that. So we have grid, standard list view. We have this map view. So a lot of the photographs where they are catalogued, they either get precise latitude and longitude on there, in which case they are put on a map nicely. Alternatively, they have sort of a geographic trail. So I think it's something like world/Europe/Scotland/ blah blah. So then it kind of does a reverse lookup on that to try and figure out if it could do latitude and longitude, and then puts a pin on the map as well. So that's that view there. And we also have a gallery view, which is kind of a bit more like sort of Google Photos. So it's kind of just a quick view of having a look through there. In this view, when you click on a record, it kind of pops out to the side. I'm just going to go into a full record so you can see that here. The full record is pretty much similar to any other sort of record that you see in any kind of collection system, really. We tried to make sure that everything was sort of discoverable and really sort of open up the collections for people. So everything, where possible, is searchable by whatever that tag is. So if you did a search for that, you would receive everything back by the ID of that person. Here you've got the geographic lookup as well. So that's kind of a normal record view. I am going to actually jump into the IIIF now. So again, it is probably the most basic of basic compared to what you guys are used to seeing, I'm afraid. So I kind of started with Universal Viewer. So my background with this is up to, I don't know, 6 months ago. I'd never even touched IIIF before. So what I will say, the tutorials, I think it was Jason Ronaldo tutorials, the workshops were invaluable to actually just working through and learning how IIIF works. They were absolutely fantastic, really invaluable. So I just kind of started with that. I kind of had a look at some of the things from the Wellcome Trust as well. They'd done some great things with the Universal Viewer. So I kind of started with that and ended up kind of going down the rabbit hole of using the Universal Viewer, which is kind of where we're at now. So it's pretty much bog standard, really. We don't do anything that fancy with it yet. We have great plans. One of the cool things that we've already actually found, one of the benefits for IIIF is in some of the teaching that we do. So I think if we do I'm just gonna see if this works. Oh, I spelled still life wrong. That's found it anyway. So I could just go straight into it. So autochrome was a photographic process in the early 1900s. It was one of the first processes of color print photography, and it was actually made up of potato starch. And it's really great for the first time, actually, we could using IIIF, we can sort of zoom right in and actually see the potato starch particles. So a lot of the photographs, we have various crops, and I think this one has a crop which is a bit more high res, and then you can actually zoom right in, and these are the actual like potato starch particles of the print. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's something that's actually a practical use, so we can start to use this in teaching at the university. One of the other things that we've sort of got in the layout here is the hierarchy. So I'm just going to go back to a better example. So I'll just go back into this one. So with a photographic collection, we have various levels. So I think we have a collection, and then a collection has a series, and then series has items in it. One of the ways we were trying to think of is how do we represent this visually so people can sort of navigate around. And actually this came from our archive collection. So when we've been developing this road, to try to think of how we shoehorn in all the other systems that we have to get in there. And one of the things was the actual hierarchy. So what this does is actually it gets the current record and it goes away and it searches for all its siblings. It then searches for its, I think its parents, and then it searches for its parents' parents, and it recursively goes around and round and round until it builds this hierarchy up. And it's just a real simple way of being able to actually quickly navigate to other records in the collection. We kind of just did it now because we knew we'd have to do it for the archive system, which always has hierarchical cataloging. And to be honest, we just wanted to get the recursion out of the way because it was absolutely horrible. So we just wanted to get any recursive coding out of the way now. We have kind of tipped our toe into AV slightly. So it's kind of just work in progress at the moment. And I absolutely guarantee that this is not up to IIIF standards. It's basically, we found it really difficult to actually get it working, and I wasn't sure whether it was because it was Universal Viewer or we tried to follow the standards and it wasn't working. So then we had to kind of go and find examples where it was working and pick it apart. And we've actually found it really difficult to get it working. But we do have video and audio working now. It's in its very simplest form. I mean, this is just basically there's nothing, no transcriptions or anything at the moment with it, but it's something that we are working on now. To try and get that a wee bit less hacky. Anyway, one of the other things as well, we have, and then again, this is more for when we start to get our digital surrogates in, and a lot of the manuscripts it's just getting actual. So this is at the moment really meant to be our photographic collection, and it is mainly based around our photographs. But again, thinking with going forward, we're going to have 3D objects in from the museum. They've already got a big stack of those that need to go in, and fingers crossed, they're going to work with the Universal Viewer in some way, hopefully. But we've also obviously got, I don't know, something like 100,000 manuscripts that need to go into this system over the next 5 years. So just as an experiment, we thought we've at least got. It was really strange actually. Because I'm a beginner with IIIF, this probably all sounds absolutely ridiculous. It took a very long time to figure out how to get 2-up pages working on my IIIF, and I don't know if that's a standard thing, but trying to get the manifest correct. So I'm trying to figure out even just how to get this showing as 2 sides so this button would actually appear was strangely time consuming from sort of picking apart various manifests from different places. It's very peculiar. So we're kind of, at the moment, it is just a photographic collection, but we've tried to prepare it for an onslaught of about, I don't know, I think it must be about 200,000 more records, probably 10 terabytes more of images at least, plus I don't even know how many more videos. One of the things that we did for a bit of fun as well, I don't know if anyone's seen the game GeoGuessr. It's a game online where it pinpoints someone on a Google Street View, and you have to guess in the world where it is, and you get points for depending on how far away you are from it. To launch this, we kind of did a quick bash at doing something like that. So it loads an image, and you have to guess where that image is. Fortunately, about 70,000 of our images are based in Scotland, so I'm going to take a bash and say Scotland. I don't know, somewhere in Scotland. Oh yeah, I was right. So, well, I was reasonably close. So this was our sort of dipping our pool in to see if there was any engagement, because we'd really like to move forward with crowdsourcing some of our catalogue records, because a lot of our records are quite barren because we've just got so much photography. We try to get the photographs online, but then it ends up being with a lot of the time with quite sparse detail. So it'd be great if we could start to crowdsource this by people could maybe go on and automatically add descriptions to what it is and that kind of thing. So that was us kind of dipping our toe into there as well. One of the other things that we want to do once we do have the manuscripts in, and we're looking at some art history things as well to get in there, is moving to have other viewers such as Mirador as well, so we can get the side-by-side images. But everyone can feel free to go and search. We've got a great collection. I don't know if this is going to work, and it's one that we always we kind of send this image as a gotcha when we're launching the sending sort of random links to people to show how good the IIIF Zoom is. We kind of tend to zoom about there and then just search, sort of copy this URL and send it in emails to people just to show how good the Zoom is. But if there's any questions, please feel free. As I said, I'm absolutely not an expert in IIIF. It was a great introduction to it just to get to this point. Anyway.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, that's really tremendous, and I wouldn't downplay your use of IIIF there. I think that's some really cool and exciting stuff. People in the comments are saying the same. We'll open it up for questions here in just a second. But one of the things I'll say is, like, for me, what's so exciting is that it's great to hear the ambitions, like how much future facing or, like thoughtful stuff you have for kind of future collections. I think that collections hierarchy thing is really impressive. It's something when I worked at the New York Public Library, we wanted to do, but we couldn't really ever figure it out. So it's cool to see it out in the wild. But yeah, I hope you'll come back and show us once some of those other things are in place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hopefully, I think our timelines are sort of June, July time for the museum, which will hopefully introduce 3D objects as something quite interesting. And then the manuscripts, hopefully, will be the end of the year. The manuscripts is the hardest one because it's cataloging manuscripts in archives is quite a lot different to the sort of the records that you tend to get in a normal in a museum system. So it's whether we can sort of shoehorn that in or not. But fingers crossed.
That's great. Are there any questions folks would like to ask Andrew or Daniel? We'll open it up to both demos. I saw one question in the chat from Ben just asking what's feeding the search interface with those filters. Was that the funnel back piece?
Yeah. So what you do in Fuddleback, I don't know if I could show. Can I share my screen again for 1 second? Let's see if this works. So it's in Fuddleback. What you have is go back to here. It's really simple actually. You basically have a. If I just go into here, you should be able to see. So literally, like clicky buttons, it indexes it all. So all this does is basically indexes the XML, and you're mapping XML to funnelback variables, and then you just say, I want to create a facet on that funnelback variable. Downsides are that you could only have one real date. So if you've got something that's a date range, that could be like 50 years in a range. So, it'll only allow one date. So there's hacks around that, but yeah. So it is as simple as saying, actually, you know what I want? Department is all. You can either select any values, all values. How do you want to sort them? Bish bash bosh. Very simple.
That's great. Other questions in our last few minutes here?
Josh, could I mention something that I forgot that I think would be important for the newspaper group and others? Sure. It's sort of related to Ben's question earlier about why we went at it our own. I'm going to share my screen again. I forgot to show a big thing for us, obviously, was OCR, because we have so many published texts. The transcriptions were important because we also have handwritten texts, and we're going to need to get those transcriptions in there. But we also have OCR. So you can see here inside of, what is it, leaflet that's inside the Bodleian, we can actually edit the OCR text and change it. We could also add new annotations if we wanted to link something. This looks very similar to what we saw in Mirador 2, that type of functionality. We're going to be adding the ability to crop the images because a lot of our manuscripts were put on plates, and then those plates, there was a lot of garbage sort of on the sides, and sometimes letters were divided in boxes mistakenly, and we can join them. But this is quite a nice little feature to be able to modify the OCR, and then the search results become more accurate because you can actually modify the OCR text. And our search engine actually plays off of the OCR and the transcription. So if there is no OCR, but there is a transcription, it will still pick up the text in the search results, which is quite helpful. The other thing I forgot to mention is that we also built in the ability to import documents, whole documents via CSV. I think I mentioned in the response to Ben and on the IIIF Discuss that I imported like 15,000 documents all at once, and all I had was this this spreadsheet that from our previous system that has our Dublin core data and it includes, I built a feed from our IIIF server that grabs the IIIF images for each of those canvases. And then when you import that into, I forget what screen I was on. When you import that here, it will automatically assign all of those things. For example, some of those ones that I just uploaded, B045, these haven't been edited yet. These were some of the ones that I uploaded that our curator can now go in and double check this information. And if he wants to add a transcription, he can, and then he just has to save it. So we didn't have to go through that process of uploading an individual CSV with 2 images if all that data existed. So sorry, I forgot to include that in my last, in the presentation.
No worries at all, and thanks for bringing it to our attention. This has been really tremendous. I'm really grateful to you both for taking the time to show this, and I think these are really both great examples of some really innovative new interface design and interaction design. So I think we'll leave it there, and thank you all for joining us here today. I hope that was useful, and we'll distribute the recording link in the notes documents and elsewhere. But yeah, thanks for the presenters, and everyone have a great Wednesday. Take care, stay inside. All right, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.